getting it in, yeah. No time for no loss, I'm paying the cost, I'm ready to win, yeah. Refuse, bond it can't be diffused. If you ain't thinking the same, then we playing by different rules. You can't see the vision, we living at different views. Until we complete the mission, keep getting up, never snooze. I walk a mile in my shoes, had the mind of a fool, chasing diamonds and jewels. Trust me, I was confused. Started minding my business and used my mind as a tool. Ended up finding my purpose and found the time to get to it. They told me I couldn't do it. They told me I couldn't make it. They sold it, could never break it. I sadly mistaken. I need a piece of the pie. I want it so bad I can taste it. They told me like told me keep on running toes, they gon' take them. Refuse to lose, built to win. Apply myself, I felt it in. No time for the doubt, they counted me out, I'm getting it in, yeah. No time for no loss, I pay for the cost, I'm winning to win, yeah. Refuse to lose, I'm built to win. Apply myself.
Welcome back to CTC. I'm your gracious host, Carl, and I'm back for the Big Ten. We got this Big Ten preview going tonight. A lot of time, but I'm ready to get into it. I know there's gonna be a lot of upset people at me. Might be some people that's happy, but time will tell. But before I get into this Big Ten preview, I'd like to shout out all the shows on the network. We got the main show featuring Joe, Tomo, and Dave. Right now, the main show is going through previews of NFL teams. Last team they previewed was the Chargers and Chiefs. So make sure you check those out. We got FFC, Fantasy Football with Coach Coombs, who's also kind of doing previews and I think fantasy stuff right now. So fantasy football season around the corner. We're week 2 of preseason that starts tomorrow. Then we got week 3. Then we got a bye week. And then NFL season's here. So almost there for the NFL. So FFC will be ramping up, I believe. Then we got BWT, Baseball with Teddy. Yankees, Aaron Judge. Just hit the 300th. I don't know if he's going to talk about that. I'm pretty sure he is. But, yeah. Also, they play my Tigers this weekend. My boy Kerry Carpenter's back. 3 bombs in 2 nights. Hit the game tying bomb in the 8th. And then we won it in extras. 2-0 since Kerry's been back. I'm excited. Then we got Dave's Doghouse, who just went live this morning. He makes dogs and put dogs in the doghouse. Highlights and lowlights in sports. So, it's kind of like, bloopers. When you were a kid, you see a top 10 and then you see the not so top 10. That's what he does. Something like that, but it's not highlights. It's players, coaches, etc. We have Kings Talk with Joe Jordan. It's probably going to ramp up more so when NBA season is around the corner. But anything Sacramento Kings, Joe does talk about that. We have RBO, Real Ballers Only. NBA content goes through Vaughn with RBO. So hidden gems, draft, off season, guys to look out for, stuff like that in the NBA. Look for Vaughn for that. We last but certainly not least got in the red corner with boxing. That's Ty, Tomo, and Ricky. Self-explanatory, man. They're talking about boxing, no exhibitions. You will make Ty mad, but straight boxing on that channel. So make sure if you listen and like boxing, you check them out. Oh, should I? Who's in here? Let me see who commented. Oh, BWC's in here. We do have a new show. I don't know if it's been announced, so I don't want to say it because I don't want to ruin it for him. But just be on the lookout if it hasn't been announced. If it has, then I'll talk about it next time. But to not take away from that moment, I'm gonna just say just be on the lookout for a new show. All right. So before I get into it, Teddy said I was told not to watch this. That was definitely by me. And he says I'm here to find out why. It's going to be later on in the show, my boy. I'm pretty sure you can put 2 and 2 together. But let's get into this Big Ten preview. So let's pull up these banners. The Big Ten, as we all know, used to be 14 teams. Used to be 2 divisions. It used to be before East and West, it used to be Legends Leaders. Then it changed to East and West. And now, this year, there are no divisions. No divisions this year because they have now added 4 new teams. They've now added UCLA, USC, Washington, and Oregon. So those are the 4 new teams to the Big Ten, pushing the teams count from 14 to 18, which is why, if you see my name, I put my name as Big Ten ? Because we almost doubled the amount of 10. We 2 teams off of Big 20. So, but yeah, 18 teams in the Big Ten. Michigan, as y'all know, is the reigning champs. I believe they're the reigning 3-time Big Ten champs. I know they won the past 2. No, yeah. I think they're the reigning 3. No. They're the reigning 2-time. I want to say Ohio State won it 2021. Something like that. I can't remember off the top right now. But I know they're the reigning 2-time champs. And, yeah, okay. I already went over my mini notes. So, to recap, 4 teams, UCLA, USC, Washington, Oregon. 14 to 18 teams. Best 2 records will play. So, again, no division. So, it's not the best in the East, best in the West. It's top 2 teams out of all 18 will play for the Big Ten championship. And I believe it's still in Indianapolis. So, let's get into our first team. Our first team we have is Illinois. Illinois is coming off of a 5-7, 3-6 season. Illinois just a team that was just up and down. And when I say up and down, offense was stagnant at best, in my opinion. You had 2 nice little running backs and Reggie Love and Caden Fagan. Luke Altmaier to me just was not it. You had 2 games that come to mind when I think of Illinois, and that's Penn State, where defense will hold Penn State, and then Illinois will just turn the ball over. And I want to say the Minnesota game, I think it was, when they played on like a Thursday or Friday night, and that game was just a turnover fest. Was it Nebraska or was it Minnesota? I want to say it was Minnesota, but it could be Nebraska because Nebraska was a team last year that also just dealt with turnovers left and right. So, yeah, man, you will have a high, like a deep ball. I think they scored like a deep ball against Minnesota to Isaiah Williams just for that to be ruined by a turnover. But, yeah, man, I just felt like Illinois, it was November 4th, 2023. Illinois won by 1 against Minnesota. I want to see if that was a night game because I think that's the game I'm talking about. But, yeah, those games just come to mind. Yeah, Isaiah Williams had 2 touchdowns that game for $131. I'm pretty sure this is the game I'm talking about. I think they went off a last-second field goal. Nope, they went off a last-second Isaiah Williams touchdown. But, man, yeah, just up and down season for Illinois. So let's get into who they return. Illinois returns 5 offensive and 5 defensive starters. They returned Luke Altmaier at quarterback, who last year went 175 for 270, 1,883 yards, 64.8% completion percentage, and 13 touchdowns with 10 picks. So, again, just up and down. Caden Fagan returns at running back, 95 carries, 438 yards, 4.6 average a carry, and 2 tuds. Pat Bryant returns with 43 catches, 560 yards, 7 touchdowns. Miles Scott on the defensive end returns at safety. 63 total tackles, 48 solos, 3 pass breakups, 2 picks, and 2 touchdowns. Xavier Scott returns at defensive back with 57 total tackles, 48 solos, 4 pass breakups, 2 picks, and a forced fumble. Dylan Rozek returns at linebacker, 82 total tackles, 52 solos, a sack, and 3 pass breakups with 4 forced fumbles. Now, some players that they lost. Reggie Love, he's now at Purdue. He was a running back who had 116 carries, 567 yards, 4.9 a carry for 4 touchdowns. They lose Isaiah Williams, who's now on the Lions, wide receiver, like I said, who had 82 catches for 1,055 yards and 5 touchdowns. They lose Casey Washington now on the Falcons, 49 catches, 670 yards, and 4 touchdowns, wide receiver. They lost Jerzon Newton, who's now on the Commanders. Defensive tackle had 52 total tackles, 26 solos, 7.5 sacks, 2 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. They lost Keith Randolph, another defensive tackle who went to the Chicago Bears. And I think, shockingly, Keith Randolph went undrafted. 49 total tackles, 20 solos, a sack and a half with a pass breakup. For defenders like D tackles and edges, yeah, I put PBUs because that's what I define passes broken up as. But, they're not really out there guarding. They're just, hands up in the passing lane, swat the ball. So pass defense, PBU, same thing. They had the 45th overall recruiting class with a 46th overall and transfer class. So 45th overall, and then with their transfers along with 46 in the country. Zachary Franklin transfers in at wide receiver, who had 4 catches for 38 yards and a touchdown at Ole Miss. Very disappointing season for me at Ole Miss. I thought he was going to do really well. Come out of UTSA, just did not do well. Terrence Brooks transfer in from Texas at cornerback with 20 tackles, 13 solos, 6 pass breakups, and 3 picks to help bolster a pretty decent defense at Illinois. Dennis Briggs Jr. comes in at defensive tackle to try to replace the law firm Keefe and Randolph. 14 total tackles, 3 solos, a sack and a half. He's coming from, what the heck did I write here? I don't even know what I wrote here. I think I wrote Florida State. Yeah, he came from Florida State and he had his best year in 2019. All right, so some numbers for Illinois. They were 60th in total offense, 61st in total defense, 81st in scoring offense, 33rd in scoring defense, 96th in rushing, 63rd in rush defense, 35th in passing, which was really shocking to me. I'm not going to lie. To be 35th in passing at Illinois being that high was really shocking. 71st in pass defense, tied 116th for turnovers lost last year. So like I said, man, the turnovers killed Illinois. They had 23 turnovers last season, and that's in 12 games. So they averaged almost 2 a game. Not good. Like I said, man, Illinois, the turnovers killed them. So we're going to jump into the schedule. Illinois, first game is against Eastern Illinois. I gave them the W against that. In the FCS school, Illinois is a Big Ten school. Defensively should just smother them, for lack of a better term. Offense should be able to get something going in this game. Kansas, a rematch against Kansas. Last year, Kansas did a really good job against Illinois. I think they do the same thing this year. I think Kansas beats Illinois. Then they go to Central Michigan, which I think they beat Central Michigan. At Nebraska, I think Nebraska wins this game at home against Illinois. At Penn State, I think Penn State is just too much for Illinois. Versus Purdue, where I can see them getting a W, which I think is their first Big Ten W. Versus Michigan, again, is going to be too much. That's an L. Oregon, at Oregon, definitely a loss. Minnesota is where I think they edge out another W. Just like last year where they edged out a W. This year, though, it is in Illinois, so I gave them the W because they are at home this year. Michigan State, at home, I did give them an L to MSU. MSU has a new regime. They actually have a head coach. Got some guys to transfer over, so I think MSU gets the W there. At Rutgers, where I do see Illinois getting a W against Rutgers. As you're going to see later, I'm not too high on Rutgers, and it's because Ethan Kaliakmanis transferred over. To be completely honest with you, that is the reason why I'm so low on Rutgers. So I think Illinois can turn Kaliakmanis over a couple times and win that game. Lastly, against Northwestern at Northwestern, I gave them an L on the road to Northwestern. Northwestern had a really good year last year, looking to hopefully build on that. I just don't think Illinois, with these turnover issues, Luke Walmart still at quarterback, I don't think they get it done. So I have Illinois going 5-7, 3-6, having a repeat season of last year. If you're an Illinois fan, you can agree, disagree with me. But yeah, man, I have y'all having the same season as last year. We move on to Indiana, where Indiana's has a new head coach, Kirk Cignetti. And if you watched the show before, you know I'm a huge Kirk Cignetti fan. Huge fan. I wanted him at MSU. I'm not mad at the coach we got in Jonathan Smith. But when R2L had me on the show, the main show had me on, I had to choose 2 coaches I wanted. Kirk Cignetti was one of them. The other one, I believe, was Willie Fritz. So, sucks that Kirk Cignetti went in the same conference as MSU, but nonetheless, good luck there. Coming off of a 3-9 1-8 season, which I don't see that repeating. Spoiler alert. They returned 5 offensive and 6 defensive starters. Donovan McCulley returns at wide receiver, 48 catches, 644 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Linnell Carr Jr. returns at defensive line. The defensive lineman with 33 total tackles, 21 solos, 5 sacks, and 2 PBUs. Now, Brendan Sorsby left, and I said this because I normally try to pick key guys that leave or stay. I picked this one because he did a better job than me than Taven Jackson. So, in which Taven Jackson actually stayed anyway, but I chose to pick Brendan Sorsby again. He just did a better job, in my opinion, at Indiana at quarterback. If you remember Indiana, they did try a 2-quarterback system. They tried to switch between Sorsby and Taven Jackson. Failed miserably, but I thought Sorsby did the better job of the two. But he's now gone for Cincy. He was a quarterback who threw 135 of 236, 1,587 yards, 57.2 completion percentage, 15 touchdowns to 5 picks, which the numbers aren't that bad. They're not great, but they're not that bad, especially the touchdown interception ratio. But Indiana just wasn't that good of a team as well. Marcus Burris Jr. returns at defensive lineman, 20 total tackles, 13 solos, and a sack. Josh Sangetti returns at defensive back, 19 total tackles, 11 solos, 2 PBUs, and 2 picks. We have Jalen Lucas, who was one of my favorite players of Indiana, the running back. He's now gone. He's went to Florida State, which is crazy. Good luck to him. He's gonna I think he's gonna do pretty well there. A guy who catches the ball out the backfield, speedy guy. Get him in open space. He's now gone. Like I said, to Florida State, 67 carries, 275 with an average of 4.1. And he did have 2 touchdowns. They lost Cameron Camper to Boise State, wide receiver with 17 catches, 285 yards, and a touchdown. They lost Aaron Casey, linebacker, to the Bengals, 109 tackles, 78 solos, 6.5 sacks with 3 pass breakups and 3 forced fumbles. Lost Lewis Moore, the safety, with 83 total tackles, 59 solos, a pass breakup, 3 picks, a pick 6, and 3 forced fumbles. He's now gone to Ole Miss. You lost Andre Carter, defensive lineman, another Indiana Hoosier who's trying to make the Bengals. He had 49 total tackles, 27 solos, 2 sacks, and 3 pass breakups. They had the 46th overall recruiting class, so 1 recruiting class overall below Illinois. But they had the 28th, with just strictly transfers, which is really good. I mean, Signetti brought a lot of guys from JMU over, including D'Angelo Pons, cornerback, 52 total tackles, 33 solos, 12 pass breakups, and 2 picks. I like D'Angelo Pons at JMU. He brought over Elijah Surratt, another guy, wide receiver, who I liked at JMU. He had 82 catches for 1,191 yards and 8 touchdowns. He brought over Curtis Rourke, quarterback from Ohio, who had an up-and-down year last year. He transferred them. He went 195 with 307, 63.5 completion percentage, 2,207 yards, 11 touchdowns, 5 picks. He brought in Miles Price from Texas Tech, wide receiver, who had 43 catches, 410 yards for 5 touchdowns. Miles Cross, to a guy that Curtis Rourke is familiar with, going to Ohio. Coming from Ohio, excuse me. He had 47 catches for 617 yards and 5 touchdowns. And then he brought over his guys, Tyson Lawton and Kalen Black. Tyson Lawton had 126 carries, 568 yards, 4.5 a carry for 5 touchdowns. Kalen Black numbers was kind of similar. Less yards. I think he had like 400-some yards. But again, bringing over that JMU talent, I wish Sam Wigglets had another year as ability. Sam Wigglets now currently on the Rams. I felt like he would have brought Sam Wigglets over as well from Ohio, but he's gone to the NFL. And good luck, because if you know me, y'all knew y'all motto, 3rd down, call 12. I love Sam Wigglets' game a lot at Ohio. So they were 99th in total offense, 85th in total defense, 103rd in scoring offense, tied 98th for scoring defense, 100th in rushing, 80th in rushing defense, 82nd in passing, tied 86th in passing defense. Just bad all around for Indiana last year. Fun fact, I don't know if y'all remember, they almost came back and beat Louisville like week 3, or their 3rd game of the season. So they were real close. They were down 21-0. Looked like Louisville was going to run away with it. Came back 21-14. Had a chance to tie. I forgot what happened. I think it was like a goal line stand that prevented that. And then Louisville, I think, got a couple first downs, was able to run the clock out. But yeah, that was like the height of Indiana season for real. But let's get into the schedule. First game is against FIU at home. Having a W. FIU was coming off of a bad year last year. I don't really know if I like what FIU did this year. Don't really remember them doing too much. I know they did lose their top receiver. I think he went to Notre Dame. So, yeah, I have them beating FIU. FIU on NCAA is crazy on all, the dynasties and all that. But I digress. Next game is against Western Illinois. I do have this as a W going against the FCS school. At UCLA for the first Big Ten game, I have it as an L. I think UCLA gets the W there. UCLA is normally a really good defensive team. I am eager to see what Deshaun Foster does with that team, however. Next game is at home against Charlotte, who had a really bad year last year. I have Indiana winning that game. Then the next game is at home against Maryland. I have Indiana winning that one. I'm interested to see what Maryland looks like now that Talia Tagovailoa is now gone. I'm interested to see, will Billy Edwards still be the starter, or is it going to be MJ Morris? We'll see. Next, we have at Northwestern, which I gave them a W. I think Cignetti gets a huge win against Northwestern. Versus Nebraska at home, I have Nebraska winning that one. If Nebraska can be not turnover happy like last year, I think Nebraska is going to be a team to be messed with in the Big Ten. They're going to surprise a lot of people. Then we have at home against Washington. I have that as an L. Washington. I know they lose a lot of production, which I'll get into when it's their segment, but I think they're still head and shoulders better than Indiana. At Michigan State, I gave them an L going on the road to Michigan State. Those games are normally tough. I think we lost one last year we shouldn't have lost, or 2 years. No, it was 2 years ago. We lost one 2 years ago that we shouldn't have lost that prevented us from going to a bowl. I think we get our revenge on that. Then from Michigan State to Michigan, it's another L. Michigan's just head and shoulders better than Indiana. Then from Michigan to at Ohio State, definitely going to Ohio State there. But I think Indiana gets the last W of the year, and they beat Purdue at home to finish the season 6-6, 3-6 in the Big Ten, and go bowling. So I do have Indiana to go bowling under Cignetti's first year at Indiana. Just like Illinois fans, Indiana, if you agree or disagree, I'm always here in the comments. But we're going to move on from Indiana to the Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa Hawkeyes coming off of a 10-2, 7-2 season last year. Lost in the Big Ten championship to Michigan. Did not score an 8-point. Defense played well, but as y'all know, Iowa offense is, Iowa offense is just bad. Iowa offense is like USC defense. And by USC, I mean Southern California. It's just bad. Then they lost the Citrus Bowl. Didn't put up any points again. 35-0 to Tennessee. Nico Iamaleava had 3 rushing touchdowns in that game. The Iowa offense, again, just bad. It's bad when your offensive coordinator in his last year says, hey, if we don't average 25 points a game, you're gone. And they were far from that, so he's now gone. And he's the head coach's son. But I digress. They're returning 9 offensive starters and 8 defensive starters, which is crazy. Cade McNamara returns at quarterback, 46 of 90 last year before he got hurt for the rest of the year. 505 yards, 51.1% completion percentage, and 4 touchdowns to 3 picks. And I've seen, I don't even know if it's true, but there's been a rumor going around that they had an open scrimmage and McNamara looked terrible. I don't know if that's true or not, but even so, it's a scrimmage. I'd rather you look terrible there than in game. They return both of their running backs. LaShawn Williams returns at running back. 170 carries, 821 yards, 4.8 a carry for a touchdown. And Caleb Johnson returns, 117 carries, 463 yards for a carry for 3 touchdowns. Caleb Brown returns, wide receiver with 22 catches for 215 yards and a touchdown. Jay Higgins returns at linebacker, 171 total tackles, 79 solos, 2 sacks, 3 PBUs, and a pick and a forced fumble. Nick Jackson returns at linebacker, 110 total tackles, 51 solos, 4 sacks, 2 pass breakups, and 2 forced fumbles at linebacker. Sebastian Castro returns at DB, 67 total tackles, 47 solos, a sack, 8 pass breakups, 3 picks, a touchdown, and a forced fumble. Yaya Black returns at the defensive line spot, 51 total tackles, 22 solos, 3.5 sacks, 4 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. Now, some key pieces. We all know they lost Cooper DeJean. Cooper DeJean should have won that Minnesota game with that punt return, but he got hosed. Cooper DeJean, cornerback, had 41 total tackles, 26 solos, 5 pass breakups, 2 picks. Now on the Eagles. Shout out my boy Kev. Lost Eric All Jr., who was a tight end who had 21 catches, 299 yards, 3 touchdowns. Now on the Bengals, they lost Joe Evans, defensive end, 46 total tackles, 28 solos, 9.5 sacks, 5 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. Now on my Baltimore Ravens, so shout out to him there. They had the 50th overall recruiting class, 130th in transfers. They barely took any transfers, to be honest. The only transfer I wrote down that they took was Jacob Gill, transfers in at wide receiver from Northwestern. And this is his career numbers, not last year, just career. 16 catches for 195 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's not going to cut it if you're Iowa. Hopefully, not hopefully, because I think they play us. Yeah, they play us in MSU. We owe them for last year. We could have won that game last year, but hopefully that don't work out. But let's go over some numbers. Now, when I tell you how bad this offense is, these numbers about to confirm how bad this offense was. 130th in total offense. Now, you might be saying, dang, that's a lot. You know, it's 130 teams that get ranked in these stats. So they're dead last in total offense, 7th in total defense. 129th in scoring offense, 4th in scoring defense. 107th in rushing, 15th in rushing defense. 127th in passing, 5th in passing defense. It's just night and day offensive defensive side of the ball with Iowa. Which, if they could figure it out on that side, offensive side of the ball, they could be dangerous. But they can't figure it out. It's even when MSU won the Big Ten championship against Iowa. We won because Iowa couldn't score. And we were able to pull off a last-second drive. LJ got the game-winning touchdown late in the game. Iowa couldn't score. Iowa's defense was stifling against MSU. But they couldn't score to pull away. Hey, gave us a Big Ten championship. I ain't mad. Let's get into the schedule, though. So the first game is against Illinois State, which I have as a W. I think they're just going to stifle them defensively. They might not even score unless some backups come in and, whatever. Then we have the rivalry game against Iowa State. And because Iowa dominates this game so much, I know it's going to be competitive, but I think Iowa pulls it out. And I think my bold prediction would be the over-under in this game might be 19.5. Not even joking. And you wouldn't even be crazy to take the under 19.5. I might be exaggerating a little bit, but it's going to be around that number. Next game against Troy, which I think is going to be a good one. But I have Iowa beating Troy. Then the first Big Ten game is again at Minnesota. I have them beating Minnesota. Then we go at Ohio State. I have them losing to Ohio State just because their offense is just not good. And Iowa State, we'll get into that later. Washington, they go at home against Washington. I have them losing to Washington. Now, you might be saying, Carl, they lose everybody on offense. They lose Penix, Polk, McMillan, Adonzier, Dylan Johnson, Jack Westover. Everybody's gone. That is true. But Jed Fish is the head coach, and he loves to sling the rock around. And he has Will Rogers at quarterback, which y'all know I'm not high on. But in a Jed Fish offense, I think Will Rogers actually might thrive in that. So I think Washington has the wherewithal to move the ball. They'll put up some touchdowns. Against Iowa, if you can put up 17, shoot, that's good enough to win. So I think Washington wins that one. Then they go at MSU, and I think they beat MSU. I think the defense might be a little too much. I think they might be able to get to Aiden Chillers a little bit, get us out of our game plan. I think Iowa wins that one. Then we go to Northwestern, which I think they beat Northwestern. Then we go to Wisconsin. I think they beat Wisconsin. I think they then go on the road to beat UCLA, another team that struggled offensively. And then I know this is last year. I know Chip Kelly's gone. I know the guy who did this, Dante Moore, is now gone. But UCLA also started 2 games throwing pick sixes. They won the one they did that against Washington State, which I know is still crazy. And they lost the one they did that with against Utah, which Iowa normally has better defenses than Utah. And I think that Iowa defense stifles UCLA to where that defense scores, they win the game, period. Then we go at Maryland. I think they beat Maryland. Then our last game of the year versus Nebraska. And if you remember me last year, I always say Iowa and Nebraska games, they go either way, man. They're always tough. Even if one school is bad and the other one is just like so good, those games are tough. But I give it to Iowa this year. So I have Iowa finishing like last year, 10-2, 7-2. Is that good enough to go to the Big Ten championship again? Who knows? But it's a great season for Iowa nonetheless. 10 wins. You can't be mad at that. We move on from Iowa to Maryland University, which if Tomo's in chat, Tomo, you don't want to listen. So for Maryland, they're coming off a 7-5, 4-5 season. They did win their bowl game. They won the Music City Bowl against Auburn, 31-13. They returned 4 offensive starters and 6 defensive starters. Billy Edwards Jr. returns at quarterback. Again, I think he is the penciled-in starter for the moment. But you have Roman Hemby. Oh, I got to go over his stats. My bad. He went 10 for 30, 128 yards, 33.3 completion percentage, a touchdown, and a pick. So that's quarterback for the University of Maryland. Then we have Roman Hemby, who I actually really like at running back. He returns. I'm low-key trying to get Tomo in here. I'm not even going to lie to y'all right now. I'm trying to get Tomo in here to see if he's going to defend his team or not. But we have Roman Hemby, who returns at running back, 142 carries, 680 yards, 4.8 a carry with 4 touchdowns at running back again. I do like that there. Then we have Caden Prather, who I was surprised who's actually back. Caden Prather, he returns at wide receiver with 42 catches, 666 yards, which is a terrible number, and 5 touchdowns. We have Ruben Hippolyte at linebacker, who I think is going to have a really good year. He's coming off of 66 total tackles, 47 solo tackles, a sack, and a PBU year last year. Dante Trader Jr. returns at safety. He plays safety slot, I think. But 53 total tackles, 38 solos, 7 pass breakups, 2 picks, and a forced fumble. Keelan Wyatt returns at linebacker, 34 total tackles, 22 solos, 4.5 sacks, and a pass breakup. Now, some guys they lose is Talia Tungavailoa. Again, like I described earlier, he's now gone. I think he's now CFL. I know he didn't get drafted, but I think he got signed to a team. I think he got signed to the Seahawks, if I'm not mistaken. Then got cut. But Talia is now gone at quarterback, 3,377 yards, 66.4% completion percentage, 25 touchdowns and 11 picks. And he also added 5 rushing touchdowns to that mix, so 30 total. They lost Deshaun Jones, who's at wide receiver for them. He's now currently on the Vikings. 56 total catches, 790 yards for 4 touchdowns. Lost Bo Bray, who now on the Ravens, who I actually watched when we played the Eagles last Friday. I thought he did pretty well in his first preseason game. Safety out of Maryland, 75 total tackles, 48 solos, 6 pass breakups, a pick, and a forced fumble. They lost Raheem Steele, cornerback, 45 total tackles, 31 solos, 2 pass breakups, and 5 picks, who now on the Chargers. Lost Corey Dykes, the tight end, who's currently on Cal. 49 catches, 491 yards, and 2 touchdowns. They had the 54th overall recruiting class, 85th in transfers. Again, MJ Morris transferred in from NC State. Last year went 63 of 113, 719 yards, 55.8 completion percentage, 7 touchdowns to 5 picks. They also brought in Jalen Husky, transferring cornerback from Bowling Green, 53 total tackles with 31 solos, 6 pass breakups, 4 picks, and a forced fumble. And they brought in the offensive lineman to help protect either Billy Edwards or MJ Morris. Alou Ba, transfers in from Georgia. So let's just hope that the hype he had at Georgia to get to Georgia bodes well for them at UMD. They were 30th in total defense last year, while 63rd in total offense, 51st in scoring offense, while 39th in scoring defense, 114th rushing, which is no surprise, while being 32nd in rushing defense, 21st in passing, while being 38th in passing defense, and they were 77th in passing yards per completion. Now, I put that stat in here because Maryland's offense was predicated a lot in the screen game. Yeah, they can attack you downfield, but they more so want to get the ball to those playmakers on the perimeter with screens and get them open space and make defenders miss. So that's why I put that stat in there. Their schedule. Let's get into the schedule for next season. They start off with UConn, which I gave them a W. I know UConn's a team that I say that's sneaky, and I still think they are kind of sneaky. I was going through some transfers, and I seen some guys go to UConn, but I think Maryland pulls that game out. Then week 2, they play Michigan State, and it's at Maryland. Maryland has won the last 2 games against MSU, which is the only 2 games they've won against MSU since they joined the Big Ten. I think that streak ends. I think MSU finally beats Maryland, and I get my Chipotle from Tomo. Then we move on to at Virginia. Last year they beat Virginia, and that's because, in large part, that Anthony Colandrea threw 3 interceptions late in the game. I want to say the fourth quarter. I don't think Colandrea does that again. I think Colandrea grows from that, and I think Maryland loses to Virginia on the road. But then they bounce back and get a win against Villanova. Then they lose at Indiana, as discussed earlier. But then they bounce back and get a win against Northwestern at home, which I think they blew that game last year. I think they take an L to USC. They then go at Minnesota and beat Minnesota, lose at Oregon, beat Rutgers, lose against Iowa, and lose at Penn State to go 5-7, 3-6, barely missing bowl eligibility. Maryland fans, I know you're going to be disappointed with me, but we can talk in the comment section. Now to move on to them MSU Spartans. And I know I'm going to piss people off with my prediction. But it's my prediction, and I have a kind of an explanation behind that. In the end. Well, kind of during one of the games. But I digress. MSU, Michigan State, has a new head ball coach in Jonathan Smith coming over from Oregon State. We are coming off of a 4-8, 2-7 season, and that was with an interim head coach. I can't remember his first name. I want to say it's Karis Barnett. I think I butchered his first name, though. We returned 3 offensive starters and 9 defensive starters. The 3 offensive starters returning. It's not a shocker, especially with, again, coming in with a new head coach, new regime. Guys hit the transfer portal. They have the option to do so. They normally take that route because they know new coaches are going to bring their guys in. The 9 returning starters on defense was the shocker because, again, as I explained with the offense, guys come over. They bring them guys over. Guys hit the portal. But Nate Carter returns at running back, one of our starters, who had 185 carries, 798 yards for 4.3 a carry and 4 touchdowns. Montoya Foster, our wide receiver, returns. We have 43 catches, 576 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Cal Holiday, I saw he returned at linebacker. I love Cal Holiday, so if he did actually return, I'm all for it. He had a 91 total tackles, 41 solos, a sack, a pick, and a touchdown. That was, I want to say, against Central Michigan. Dylan Tatum, one of my favorite players on the team, returns at safety. 45 total tackles, 30 solos, and 7 pass breakups. Malik Spencer returns at defensive back. 73 total tackles, 42 solos, and 6 pass breakups. Chance Rucker returns as safety. 23 total tackles, 14 solos, 4 pass breakups, and a pick. Caden Hauser is now gone at quarterback. 112 for 191, 1,130 yards, 58.6 completion percentage, 6 touchdowns and 5 picks. He is now at East Carolina. We've lost Malik Carr, who's now at the University of Houston, tight end. I know my guy Luke, who will be on Friday to further discuss MSU. He was high on Malik Carr. He's now gone. He had 30 catches for 352 yards and 3 touchdowns. We lose Tyrell Henry, who I like that receiver. He's now gone to the University of Wisconsin. He had 24 catches, 195 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I like them at receiver, and I like them in the return game as well. I thought he was a playmaker. He's now gone. We lost Simeon Barrow Jr., who's now at the U, as discussed in the ACC episode. He had 36 total tackles, 14 solos, 3.5 sacks, and a forced fumble. Lost Jaden Mangum, who he went to the University of Michigan. I wasn't too mad he left, to be honest. So Jaden to me had games where he just did not look as good, and then he had games that he looked cool. So him hitting the transfer portal, I know it kind of hurt other people. It didn't really hurt me as much. I wasn't too mad. But yeah, he's like a cornerback safety mix. So not as good as Mike Sandstill, because not even close, but he's got a hybrid guy like Mike Sandstill. So he had 53 total tackles, 29 solos, 3 pass breakups, and 4 interceptions. Again, transferred to Michigan. We had the 31st overall recruiting class, which is really good, to be honest. And we were 12th in transfers, which is exceptionally well. One transfer that I wanted that went to the U. I wanted Damian Martinez to join his old ball coach, but went to the U. But we got Aiden Tillis, transfer quarterback, who went 24-35, 309 yards, 68.6 completion percentage, and 4 touchdowns, coming over from Oregon State. Jack Verlin, who was on the thumbnail, he transfers in that tight end, 29 catches, 438 yards for 8 touchdowns, tight end from Oregon State. Kayron Lynch-Adams, he comes over from UMass. Running back, who had 236 carries, 1,157 yards, 4.9 a carry, and 12 touchdowns. He was there with Tyson Pumachan. He's now coming over to MSU. Nakai Martinez transfers in at cornerback from UCF. 54 total tackles, 40 solos, a pass breakup, and 3 picks. Wayne Matthews, who went to my high school, shout out Flowers University. That's Flowers University. Flowers High School. He's transferring in from Old Dominion, linebacker who had 135 total tackles, 39 solo tackles, 3 pass breakups, 3.5 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles. Daquan Dowse transfers in a D tackle from Georgia Tech, 35 total tackles, 17 solos, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. Now some horrid numbers because offensively we just weren't good. Under Caden Hauser, under Noah Kim, just were not good. 125th in total offense, 76th in total defense, 128th in scoring offense, mind you, out of 130. 84th in scoring defense, which actually kind of surprised me. 125th in rushing, 68th in rush defense, 96th in passing, and tied 86th for passing defense. That surprised me because, man, I told people, man, if you want to beat us, just throw the rock around all day. You'll beat us. Secondary really wasn't that good last year. To not be in the 100th was a surprise to me, but hey, the numbers are the numbers. But now to the part everybody's been waiting for, the schedule. First game is against FAU. I gave us a W. Now, FAU is not a bad Conference USA team. They're not. But I think we beat FAU convincingly. Then we go at Maryland, as described earlier. I think we beat Maryland on the road. Prairie A&M is a HBCU. I think we do beat them. Shocked there's not Youngstown State because it's normally Youngstown State, but whatever. We then move on to Boston College at Boston College for the Red Bandana. And like I said in the ACC show, I think it's a close game. It will be hard for it because of the Red Bandana game, but I think we edge it out. Then we go to Ohio State. We have a rough 4 weeks, 4-week span. Go to Ohio State. No. We play Ohio State at home, I think we lose. At Oregon, we lose. Against Iowa, I have us losing at home. And at the big house against Michigan, I have a W. I'm sorry. I know Michigan fans going to kill me. I think we win that game. And the reason why I say that is because when Mel Tucker was the first-year head coach, Michigan, washed us the year before. No, I'm sorry. No, they didn't. Because the year before, we won in 2020 because Ricky White went crazy. In 2019, they washed us. They washed us 2019. 2020, we won, but I would say the COVID year, both teams weren't that good. Michigan came in with a lot of hype, a lot of players. They thought they were going to dog us, and we won. Now, we don't have a Kenneth Walker. I will say that. We don't have a Kenneth Walker, but it was Mel Tucker's first year. No, I think Mel Tucker's first year was 20. No. Yeah, it was Mel Tucker's first year. It was a whole new regime change. We had Peyton Thorne. You see what he's doing at Auburn. Wasn't high on the guy. I just think with all the new pieces, the first year thing and everything, I think we get it done. I'm sorry. It just is what it is. I think we can get it done in a good game. Also, Michigan lost a lot. They lost a lot. Sharon Moore is also a first-year head coach. Now, he did do well going 6-0 as an interim head coach, including beating Ohio State, which is impressive. But he loses so much. He loses J.J. McCarthy. He loses Blake Corum. He loses Cornelius Johnson and Roman Wilson. He loses a lot. And they also lose Mike Sarenstill in the defensive end, Junior Colson, Chris Jenkins Jr. They lose so much production. I think that we can edge it out. Moving on, against Indiana, I think we beat Indiana in a close one at home. I think we beat Illinois on the road. I think we beat Purdue at home. And I think we finished the year 9-3, 6-3 by beating Rutgers at home, in which we owe them one because last year blowing that 18-point lead pissed me off. We should have not blown that lead. I don't know what happened. Think we avenged that loss. Going 9-3, 6-3 in conference play under first-year head coach Jonathan Smith, which is pretty similar to what we did with Mel Tucker. I think we won 10 games under Mel, won the Peach Bowl against Pitt. Wasn't predicted to do that at all. So I think that's a solid prediction. I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback for that. But we move on to the team up north, the team I don't want to talk about, but I have to talk about, the University of Michigan. They, like I said earlier, have a new head coach in Sharon Moore. They're coming off of a 14-0 season, Big Ten championship, and national championship. They're also coming off a whole bunch of scandal, but I digress. This is not the episode for that. They returned 1 offensive starter and 4 defensive starters. Though they do return Donovan Edwards at running back, which is, I think that's pretty key. He had 119 carries for 497 yards at 4.2 a carry for 5 touchdowns. They do return Colston Loveland, who I think is the only starter to come back at tight end. 45 catches, 649 yards, 4 touchdowns at tight end. They returned Will Johnson, which this one made me sick. I ain't gonna lie. Because y'all know I don't like University of Michigan, but I really like Will Johnson at cornerback. He's so good. 27 total tackles, 20 solos, 4 pass breakups, 4 picks, and a touchdown for Will Johnson. Return Mason Graham at defensive end, 35 total tackles, 23 solos, 3 sacks, a pass breakup, and a forced fumble. Now, I named all the guys they lost in the segment prior, but I didn't name the stats. So we'll start with J.J. McCarthy, who get well soon, is out for the year. When I say I dislike you, it's just sports. So I don't wish nothing bad against you. So speedy recovery, JJ. Hope all goes well in that aspect. But J.J. McCarthy, quarterback who went 240 for 332, 2,991 yards, 72.3% completion percentage, 22 touchdowns to 4 picks, drafted by the Vikings. Lost Blake Corum, drafted by the Rams. Running back, 258 carries, 1,245 yards, 4.8 a carry with 27 touchdowns, which is insane. Lost Roman Wilson, now on the Steelers. 48 total catches, 789 yards for 12 touchdowns. Lost Cornelius Johnson, who's currently on the Chargers. 47 catches for 604 yards and a touchdown. Lost Junior Colson, who's currently on the Chargers. So Hardball bringing his guys over. 95 total tackles, 44 solos, 2 pass breakups. Lost Mike Sarenstill, who's currently on the Commanders. Again, the gadget guy. 44 total tackles, 26 solos, 2 sacks, 6 pass breakups, a pick, 2 touchdowns, 2 forced fumbles. Currently on the Commanders. Lost Chris Jenkins Jr., defensive tackle, 37 total tackles, 17 solos, 2.5 sacks, and a pick on the Bengals. And they lost Jalen Harrell on the edge, 31 total tackles, 15 solos, 6.5 sacks, a pass breakup, and 2 forced fumbles, currently on the Titans. Now, they're the 19th overall ranked recruiting class, which I ain't gonna lie, I thought that was pretty low for the University of Michigan, especially coming off a national championship. And they were 58th in transfers. So I would say not a great job being the University of Michigan. Most places, this is fantastic. But for Michigan standards, I thought this was not a great job recruiting. Wesley Walker transfers in at safety. 53 total tackles, 33 solos, 2 pass breakups, a sack, and a forced fumble from Louisville. Jaden Mangum, like I just said earlier, from MSU. 53 total tackles, 29 solos, 3 pass breakups, and 4 picks. Ricky Johnson from UNLV, cornerback, transfers in. 36 total tackles, 25 solos, and 7 pass breakups. Now, some numbers. They were 67th in total offense, 1st in total defense, 14th in scoring offense, 1st in scoring defense, 54th in rushing, which was actually crazy in my opinion. I thought that was shocking. 5th in rushing defense, 81st in passing, 2nd in passing defense, and they were 1st in turnover margin. So they were really good with the ball, but they were also really good at turning you over. Schedule. Let's get into the schedule. So first game was against Fresno State, who might be in my 10 teams to look out for. That's next Tuesday. I have them beating Fresno State, however. Then the matchup that everybody's waiting on, the big game against Texas, I have them losing to Texas at the Big House. Arkansas State is next. I think that's a bounce back win. USC is after. I think that's another win. I think they beat Minnesota. I think they beat Washington at Washington. I think they could just get. I think they'll do. I think that they disrupt Jed Fish's game plan that week. Jesus, that was hard for me to get out, but I said it nonetheless. They beat Illinois at Illinois again. Like I said earlier, they lose to MSU at home. They lose to Oregon at home. They beat Indiana on the road. They beat Northwestern on the road. And I think this is the year Ryan Day at home finally beats Ohio State, in large part to Jim Knowles. Having Michigan going 8-4, 6-3 in the Big Ten, which not a great season, but it's decent nonetheless. we'll move on. I know Michigan fans are going to kill me in the comments. You think MSU going to be better than Michigan? Yeah, I'm sorry. We move on to Minnesota. Minnesota, coming off of a 5-7, 3-6 year, were bowl eligible only because there was lack of bowl eligible teams. Same with Jacksonville State, who might be in my 10 teams, who knows? But they won the Quick Lanes Bowl versus Bowling Green 30-24. They returned 5 offensive starters and 9 defensive starters. Main starter they returned is running back Darius Taylor in his true sophomore year. Last year had 138 carries for 799 yards, 5.8 a carry for 5 touchdowns. They returned Daniel Jackson, who I also believe is a true sophomore. I can look that up though. Daniel Jackson had 59 catches for 831 yards and 8 touchdowns, which was a really good year considering that the quarterback play for Minnesota was not that good. Yep. No. Daniel Jackson is actually a senior, so my apologies there. They returned Jack Henderson at defensive back, 59 total tackles, 41 solos, a sack, a pass breakup, and 2 picks. Returned Jaw Joyner, defensive lineman, 18 total tackles, 13 solos, 7.5 sacks, pass breakup, and 2 forced fumbles. Returned Danny Strigo, 51 total tackles, 30 solos, 6 sacks, and a forced fumble. Returned Maverick Bergelli, linebacker, 52 total tackles, 23 solos, sack, and 2-point pass breakups. They do lose, like I said earlier, Ethan Kaliakmanis, which I ain't gonna lie, he tricked me the first game, or first half of the first game. He started that Nebraska game. I'm like, who is this guy? He kind of slinging the rock around, and then he showed his true colors. But anyway, he's now transferred to Rutgers. He went 156 for 294, 1,838 yards with a completion percentage of 53.1, 14 touchdowns to 9 picks. They lost Corey Coombs. He graduated basically. 28 catches for 376 yards. Lost Brevin Spanford, tight end trying to make the Cowboys. 25 catches for 239 yards and 2 touchdowns. Lost Tyler Nubin, who was one of my favorite safeties in the country last year. 53 total tackles, 34 solos, a sack, 4 pass breakups, 5 picks, and a forced fumble currently on the Giants. Lost Trayvon Jones, a defensive back, 53 total tackles, 44 solos, a sack, 8 pass breakups, and 2 interceptions. Now, one guy, I wasn't going to mention him until I got to the team where he transferred to, but they lost Dino, Kaliakmanis' brother, wide receiver. The only reason why I mentioned it is because, he's going to Rutgers with his brother, so I felt like that was kind of mentionable. But other than that, it doesn't really matter. He didn't play for Minnesota. They were 33rd in recruiting class, 35th in transfers, which I think that's pretty good for Minnesota. Max Brosmer transfers and a quarterback from New Hampshire, and he had a really good year at the FCS level. 291 for 455, 3,459 yards, 64 completion percentage, 29 touchdowns, and 6 picks. So Minnesota's hoping he can recreate that magic in Minnesota. Hopefully he can row the boat. Now, they had a bunch of running back transfers, which made no sense to me, seeing that Darius Taylor came back. Some being Saya Bangura, Jaron Mangum from MSU, and yeah, they just had a bunch of running backs. Now, some numbers for Minnesota. They were 122nd in total offense. I think this is 54th in total defense, 108th in scoring offense, tied 67th scoring defense, 65th in rushing, 62nd in rushing defense, 123rd in passing, 59th in passing defense. And they only had 39 red zone attempts on offense for the year, which averages out to being in the red zone about 3.3. That's not like 3.25 because it's 12 games a year. So 3 is 36, and that leaves 3 out of 12. That's a quarter. So that's 3.25 red zone trips a game. That's not good. So again, just justifies why the offensive numbers are so poor. But let's get into the schedule. They do play North Carolina week 1. I think they beat North Carolina. I think they get Max Johnson to turn the ball over. I think they beat North Carolina. Then they move on to Rhode Island, which I think they beat Rhode Island. Then they move on to Nevada. I think they go undefeated in non-con, beating Nevada. And now we start Big Ten play with the first game against Iowa, as previously described. I think that's an L. Then I think, as previously described, they lose to Michigan. I think they beat USC strictly off defense, and that they might be able to generate some offense because USC defenses normally don't perform. When Utah can put up 30-plus points on you without Cam Rising, the way that offense was playing last year, almost anybody should be able to generate points against you on offense if the defense is going to continue to be that bad under Lincoln Riley. Think they lose to UCLA because unlike USC, UCLA actually has pretty good defenses in the past, and I think that is going to be the downfall in that game. Think they lose to Maryland. I think Maryland is just going to be a little too much throughout the air. Think they lose to Illinois. Again, one of those games that can go either way. I know they're looking for revenge for last year, but they're now on the road. I think Illinois can win that one. Think they beat Rutgers. I think they lose to Penn State and Wisconsin to end the year 5-7, 2-7, which is kind of on par for the same year as last year. Just one more Big Ten loss than they did have last year. So that's my year for PJ Fleck, and then PJ Fleck might be on the hot seat if that becomes true. We're going to move on to Nebraska. Like I said earlier, I am kind of high on Nebraska, and y'all will see in this preview. For the University of Nebraska, they are coming off of a 5-7, 3-6 season. Now you might be thinking, Carl, with that season being so bad as it was, why are you so high on Nebraska? A lot of that is because the turnovers at inopportune times. Should have beat Colorado. Should have beat Minnesota. That's 2 games right there to go 7-5. Other games I can't remember off the top of my head, but I do remember turnovers being a huge cause of why Nebraska would lose games. Those quarterbacks and turnover-prone guys are now gone. And in comes a phenomenal freshman, which I don't even talk about freshmen like that, but Dylan Raiola, son of, why can't I remember Brad's first name? He played for the Lions. The Lions O-lineman, Raiola, I can't remember his name. I want to say Dominique, but I'm not sure if that's correct. But, yeah, he's the son of the Lions O-lineman who's supposed to be a 5-star quarterback who is going to kill it this year, apparently. I'll see when the time comes, but I do think that I might like the hype. Return 7 starters on offense and defense. Return Gabe Irvin Jr. at running back, 38 carries for 196 yards, 5.2 a carry, and a touchdown. Return Thomas Fedon at tight end, 25 catches for 260 yards and 4 touchdowns. Return Jalen Lloyd, 6 catches for 237 yards and 3 touchdowns at wide receiver. That's actually crazy. 6 catches for 237 is crazy. I might have forgot a number. Return Isaac Gifford, defensive back, 86 total tackles, 44 solos, half a sack, 8 pass breakups, and a pick. Return Jamari Butler at the defensive line, 34 total tackles, 17 solos, 5.5 sacks, 2 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. Return Cameron Leonard, defensive lineman, 16 total tackles, 9 solos, 3 sacks. Lost Anthony Grant, the running back. He's now gone. I think he graduated. 104 carries, 413 yards, 4 carry, 3 touchdowns. Lost Billy Kemp the fourth, again graduated. 35 catches for 310 yards and a touchdown. Lost Quentin Newsom, which, I mean, bro, if he was still coming back next year, it was about to be crazy. But he's a cornerback who had 37 total tackles, 20 solos, 3 pass breakups, and a pick. Currently on the Broncos. Good luck to you. I did like Quentin Newsom a lot at Nebraska. Lost Omar Brown, who I liked a lot too at safety. 51 total tackles, 35 solos, 3 pass breakups, a pick, and 2 forced fumbles. And he joins his teammate Quentin Newsom with the Broncos. Lost Luke Raymer at linebacker, 48 total tackles, 23 solos, and 5 sacks. They were 23rd overall in recruiting class, which is really good for Matt Rule. And they were 53rd in transfers, which is Jamal Banks transfers in that wide receiver from Wake Forest, who had 59 catches for 653 yards and 4 touchdowns, which is not bad considering where he was at. Brought in Dante Dowdle, another transfer at running back, 17 carries, 90 yards, 5.3 a carry, and a touchdown on Oregon, which was a loaded backfield with Bucky Irvin and Jordan James. Brought in Isaiah Nair, transferring from wide receiver from Wyoming and Texas. He had 44 catches, 870 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Bly Hill transferred in from cornerback. Transferred in at cornerback from St. Francis of Pennsylvania. He had 21 total tackles, 17 solos, 5 pass breakups, and 2 picks. Now, some numbers for Nebraska. Tied 115 for total offense, 11 for total defense, 120 scoring offense, 13 for scoring defense, 38th in rushing, 8th in rushing defense, 126 in passing, 40th in passing defense, and they were 129th in turnover margin. Like I said, the turnover was killing them. 17 with a minus 17, 31 total turnovers. Just insanity. Your defense gets you 14 turnovers on the year. You had 31 total turnovers. That's insane. But let's get into the schedule. So the first game is against UTEP, coming off a bad year for UTEP. Giving this to Nebraska. Then at Colorado. No. They were at Colorado when they lost. This year's at home against Colorado. I think they get their revenge. I know Colorado's coming in with a lot of hype. Some of it not really worth it, to be honest, but I think Nebraska gets their revenge. I think Nebraska should have won last year. Just turnover after turnover killed them. Don't see that happening again. Then we move on to University of Northern Iowa, FCS school. I have Nebraska winning that. Then I have Nebraska starting the Big Ten play with the win against Illinois, beating Purdue at Purdue, beating Rutgers, beating Indiana at Indiana. Suffering their first loss at Ohio State, beating UCLA, beating USC, beating Wisconsin, and then losing at Iowa to go 10-2, 7-2. The Cornhuskers has a great bounce back year under Matt Rule, who's a really good college coach. We move on to Northwestern. Northwestern Wildcats coming off a surprising everybody shocking year of 7-5, 5-4, beating Utah in the Vegas Bowl 14-7. They returned 6 offensive starters, 8 defensive starters. They returned Cam Porter at running back, 166 carries, 651 yards, 3.9 a carry with 4 touchdowns, just barely below the Golden Standard. Bryce Kurtz at wide receiver, 49 receptions for 701 yards and 5 touchdowns. Returned AJ Henning, wide receiver, with 45 catches, 418 yards and 4 touchdowns. Returned Xander Mueller, at linebacker, 110 tackles, 55 solo, 5 sacks, 2 pass breakups, 3 picks, and a forced fumble. Returned Aiden Hubbard at defensive lineman, 27 total tackles, 18 solos, 6 sacks, and a pass breakup. Returned Anto Saka at defensive lineman, 13 total tackles, 7 solos, 5.5 sacks, and a forced fumble. Now they lost Ben Bryant. I feel like the energy blue guy. He was a quarterback. He went 173, a 277, 1,807 yards, 62.5 completion percentage, 13 touchdowns, and 6 picks. I forgot what team he's trying to make right now, but good luck to him. Lost Cam Johnson, wide receiver, 54 catches, 715 yards, 6 touchdowns, trying to make the Cowboys. Lost Bryce Gallagher at linebacker, 120 tackles, 46 solos, a sack, 2 pass breakups, a pick, and 2 forced fumbles. Lost Roy Hurd Jr. at safety, 85 total tackles, 54 solos, a sack, 4 pass breakups, a pick, 2 forced fumbles, transferring to West Virginia. 96 overall recruiting class, which is not bad for Northwestern. Northwestern recruiting classes aren't that good. It's a tough school to get into, if I remember correctly. And they were 121st in transfers. I don't remember them taking too many transfers. The only transfer I wrote down was at quarterback Mike Wright from Mississippi State. Went 48 to 85, 453 yards, 56.5 completion percentage, 3 touchdowns and 3 picks. I'm not too high on that transfer. Yeah, he can use his legs. I'm not too high on the guy, Mike Wright, but he might be what Northwestern needs. They were 21st. No. They were 121st in total offense, 35th in total defense, 104th in scoring offense, 40th in scoring defense, 119th in rushing, 81st in rushing defense, 94th in passing, 13th in passing defense, or I think this is 15th, excuse me. And they were tied 31st in red zone defense, which was kind of a reason why they went 7-5. Really good red zone defense, hold the teams to field goals. Offensively, not as good, but Ben Bryant did just enough to win 7 games and including winning a bowl game. Let's get into the schedule. Their first game was against Miami of Ohio, who lost some pieces. I think Brett Gabbert is gone as well, so I think that I'll give them the W against Miami. I did give them the W against Duke. I think it's going to be more of a defensive game. I think Northwestern edges it out. I do have them beating Eastern Illinois, but then I have them losing at Washington, losing against Indiana, losing at Maryland, beating Wisconsin, losing at Iowa, losing at Purdue, losing to Ohio State, losing at Michigan, and finally beating Illinois to go 5-7, 2-7. 2-game slip up, but I think last year was a surprise. I don't think they're going to surprise anybody this year. And I think they just barely missed bowl eligibility unless we have a situation where not enough teams are bowl eligible. Now, I know this is one of the teams people probably couldn't wait for me to preview, and that's the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, Ohio State coming with big expectations every year. And I would say under Ryan Day so far has not met up with them, including just losing 3 straight to Michigan. That's just can't do that if you're at Ohio State. you can go 6-6. You just better be Michigan. And to lose them 3 straight, that I don't think is going to be hot seat worthy, but people are kind of looking at you like, hey, bro, get it together. So they're coming off an 11-1 season, the one being Michigan. 8-1. Lost the Cotton Bowl 14-3 to Mizzou, but they didn't have Marvin Harrison. I don't think Marvin Harrison Jr. played, and I know they didn't have Kyle McCord. I think Devin Brown is his name. I think he was the quarterback, but they don't have to worry about him because he's not going to be a starting quarterback this year. We'll get into that a little bit later. They returned 6 offensive starters, 9 defensive starters, which is why I'm high on Ohio State, because the 9 defensive starters mixed in with Jim Knowles. As y'all know, I love Jim Knowles. That's why I'm so high on them. But they returned Travion Henderson at running back, 156 carries, 926 yards, 5.9 a carry, and 11 touchdowns. They returned Emeka Egbuka, 41 catches, 515 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Not really. It was really a down year for him, but I don't really 100% blame Egbuka. Returned Davison Benosson, cornerback, 80 total tackles, 40 solos, a sack, and a forced fumble. Returned Denzel Burke, which is a huge return at cornerback, 24 total tackles, 15 solos, 8 pass breakups. I think that's supposed to be 18 solos, actually. A pick and a forced fumble. Returned Jack Sawyer, which Jack Sawyer is supposed to be like really good. 48 total tackles, 24 solos, 6.5 sacks, 2 pass breakups, and 2 forced fumbles. Returned JT Tuilalau, defensive end, 38 total tackles, 12 solos, 5 sacks, and 2 pass breakups. Sonny Styles at safety is a huge return. 53 total tackles, 32 solos, 2 sacks, pass breakup, and a forced fumble. Now, some guys they lost. Kyle McCord, the quarterback, he's now at Syracuse. He went 229 for 348, 3,170 yards, 65.8 completion percentage, 24 touchdowns, and 6 picks. But those numbers will deceive you. Ohio State passing game just did not look fluid under Kyle McCord, in my opinion. I think a lot of those numbers are Marvin Harrison Jr. made, but that's just me. Speaking of Marvin Harrison Jr., he's now gone. He's at the NFL level on the Cardinals, wide receiver who had 67 catches, 1,211 yards, 14 touchdowns. So out of the 24 touchdowns, Kyle threw 14 with the Marvin. Chip Trainium, who's now at Kentucky, running back, 85 carries, 373 yards, 4.4 carry for 3 touchdowns. Cade Stover, now on the Texans, former C.J. Stroud teammate, now back with C.J. Stroud. Cade Stover, tight end, 41 catches, 576 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So 2 guys that went to the NFL, Marvin and Cade, account for 19 of the 24 touchdowns Kyle McCord threw. And the last 5 went to what? Emeka Egbuka, correct? No, 4 of the last 5 went to Egbuka. So they lose Steel Chambers, linebacker, 83 total tackles, 41 solos, pass breakup, and an interception. Now on the Patriots. I actually like that for the Patriots. They lost Tommy Eckenberg, linebacker, 80 total tackles, 40 solos, a sack, and a forced fumble. Now on the Raiders, that might actually be good for the Raiders too if you can learn under Robert Spillane. I think that's a good fit. 3rd overall recruiting class, which is obviously phenomenal, and 9th in transfers. You mix those 2 together, phenomenal. Now, some transfers I have. Quinshon Judkins. Again, this one pissed me off when it happened because, one, why are you transferring from Ole Miss? You didn't have to. You and Jackson Dart is my boy. So you and Jackson Dart and touchdown trade was supposed to make a lethal combo for y'all last year at Ole Miss. Y'all supposed to go crazy. But he went to Ohio State. The rich get richer. Quinshon Judkins had 271 carries, 1,158 yards, 4.3 carry for 15 touchdowns. So that's the production he brings to Ohio State in that backfield. Caleb Downs, another one. Like, well, I get why you left because Nick Saban gone. I don't know if you want to play with Kalen DeBoer, but he just boasts the already good Ohio State defense at safety. One of the best freshmen, not just freshman safeties. He's one of the best freshmen in the country. Now, you also got the freshman last year at Purdue, Daniel, and I can't pronounce his name without looking at it. I think it's like Thielsman or something like that. Purdue, who had a phenomenal year as a freshman. Those are like the best 2 freshmen in the country. But Caleb Downs transfers in that safety, 107 total tackles, 70 solo tackles, 3 pass breakups, 2 picks, and a forced fumble. Then Will Howard transfers in that quarterback from Kansas State, 219 to 357, 2,643 yards, 61.3 completion percentage, 24 touchdowns and 10 picks. On the ground, he also had 351 yards, which for quarterbacks, I try not to include yards because if you get sacked, that counts against you. But he had 9 total touchdowns on the ground, making his total 33 touchdowns accounted for at Kansas State. Will Kagmerich transfers in at tight end from University of Ohio down the road, 22 catches, 243 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now some numbers for Ohio State. They had the 47th total offense, 3rd total defense, 44th in scoring offense, 2nd in scoring defense, 87th in rushing offense, 27th in scoring defense, 30th in passing offense, 1st in passing defense, and they were tied 12th for red zone defense. Like I said, man, I love me some Jim Knowles. I thought Ohio State would be one of the best defenses in the country last year under Jim Knowles, and that's exactly what they were. And I think it's only going to get better with the guys that they added on to his team and the starters coming back. So let's get into the schedule. I have them beating Akron, beating Western Michigan, beating Marshall, beating Michigan State on the road, beating Iowa. I have them losing to Oregon at Oregon only because it's at Oregon. If this game was in the horseshoe, I would have Ohio State beating Oregon. But because they're on the road at Autzen Stadium, I have them losing. That's the legit only reason why I have them losing to Oregon, because they're on the road. Have them beating Nebraska, winning in Happy Valley against Penn State, beating Purdue, beating Northwestern at Northwestern, beating Indiana, and beating Michigan at home in the horseshoe to go 11-1, 8-1, and yeah, that might be Big Ten championship eligible. Who knows? But I think Ohio State has a really good year. Ohio State could go undefeated. I think the Oregon game is the swing game between going undefeated and losing one game. But yeah, we're going to move on from Ohio State to the team that I have Ohio State losing to. And the Oregon Ducks, again, this is their first year in the Big Ten. Oregon coming off of a 11-1 season, only loss being to Washington, who they lost to twice because they lost to them in the Pac-12 championship. And then they beat the mess out of Liberty in the Fiesta Bowl 45-6, which, I mean, they were being nice to let Liberty score in the garbage time. But no, I think Liberty scored early and then it went over from there. I can't remember. But nonetheless, they beat the mess out of Liberty, which I was banging the table for them to be the New Year's Six Group of 5 team, and they did just that. They returned 6 offensive starters, 4 defensive starters. Returned Jordan James at running back, 107 carries, 759 yards, and 7.1 a carry, and 11 touchdowns. Returned Tez Johnson, which that was huge. 86 catches for 1,182 yards, 10 touchdowns, wide receiver. Returned Trayshawn Holden, another wide receiver who had 37 catches, 452 yards, 6 touchdowns. Now, you might be thinking, Carl, that's not that much. When you mix that in with the fact that they lost Troy Franklin, which I haven't done this yet, but I'm going to just do it now. Troy Franklin went 81 catches, 1,383 yards, and 14 touchdowns. It's pretty good when you have 2 number 1 options. You right there. They returned Terrence Ferguson at tight end, 42 catches, 414 yards, and 6 touchdowns. So, again, man, it's just a lot of passing going on at Oregon. Returned Jeffrey Bossa at linebacker, 71 total tackles, 42 solos, a pass breakup, a pick, and a touchdown. Returned Jordan Birch at defensive end, 34 total tackles, 13 solos, 5 sacks, and a pass breakup. Now, who they lost? Obviously, they lost Bo Nix. Quarterback went to the Broncos, 364 out of 470. 4,508 yards, 77.4 completion percentage, 45 touchdowns and 3 picks, and he added on 6 rushing touchdowns, making his total 51. 51 total touchdowns. Bucky Irvin, running back, 186 carries, 1,180 yards, 6.3 average, 11 touchdowns. He's now on the Bucks. They lost Troy Franklin. We already said his numbers. He's on the Broncos with Bo Nix, so shout out to him. Lost Kyrie Johnson. That's Johnson. Oh, my God, I feel so bad because RP, by the way. Kyrie Jackson. So sorry. Lost Kyrie Jackson, cornerback. Moment of silence for him. RP, man. Sad story, sad case. He had 34 total tackles, 25 solos, 2 sacks, 7 pass breakups, and 3 picks. Was drafted to the Vikings. Unfortunately, we won't see how that ends up. Lost Evan Williams to the Falcons. No, to the Packers. Excuse me. To the Packers. Lost Evan Williams to the Packers. Safety, who had 82 total tackles, 49 solos, 4.5 sacks, pass breakup, and forced fumble. And lastly, they lost Brandon Dorless, defensive tackle with 25 total tackles, 14 solos, 5 sacks, 7 pass breakups. That's who on the Falcons. Read his wrong. 4th overall recruiting class, which is again, phenomenal. You know, they got the jerseys and all that to entice you to come to Oregon. Second in transfers, which is outstanding, being led by the transfer quarterback, who this should be his last year, and Dylan Gabriel, coming in from Oklahoma, who went 266 to 384, 3,660 yards for 69.3 completion percentage, 30 touchdowns and 6 picks, and you add 12 rushing touchdowns on that to make his total 42 total touchdowns, again, coming out of Oklahoma. Then you bring over Kobe Savage, safety out of Kansas State, who I really like. He had 57 total tackles, 38 solos, and 3 picks. Then you bring over, and if you watch this channel, you know I'm a huge fan of Jabbar Muhammad, cornerback, locked down from Washington. He had 46 total tackles, 41 solos, 14 pass breakups, 2 sacks, and 3 picks. Then you bring over Evan Stewart, the shifty, small, wide receiver, speedy guy. He had 38 catches for 514 yards and 4 touchdowns at Texas A&M. And you might be saying, Carl, that's not even that good. But when you look at the quarterback play at Texas A&M last year, you understand why that's actually really good. Then you bring over Cam Alexander, a cornerback from UTSA. I like, if you know me, I mess with UTSA football. I would like to see how they do under Owen McCown since Frank Harris is now gone. But Cam Alexander was really good at the cornerback spot. 34 total tackles, 32 solos, 15 pass breakups, a sack, 2 picks. And then you match that up with these numbers, which a lot of it is gone, but second in total offense, 22nd in total defense, second in scoring offense, 9th in scoring defense, 29th in rushing, 10th in rushing defense, first in passing, 54th in passing defense, and then 9th in turnover margin with plus 11. And another stat for you, Bo Nix was the least sacked quarterback all of last year. I think he only got sacked 5 times all of last year. So that O-line protected him. You know, they lost Johnson Powers Jackson, the center. He's now gone to the league. But he actually dropped, and that made me mad, by the way. But yeah, man, let's get into the schedule. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I have Oregon going undefeated, 9-0 in Big Ten play, beating Idaho, Boise State, at Oregon State, at UCLA, Michigan State, Ohio State, at Purdue, Illinois, at Michigan, Maryland was at Wisconsin, and Washington. I have Oregon running the gauntlet. Oregon fans don't kill me. That was an accident. Oregon State was on the schedule, got mixed up. But yeah, I have Oregon going 12-0, 9-0 in conference. We're going to move on to the Penn State Nittany Lions. They're coming off a 10-2, 7-2 season. Really good year there. Lost the Peach Bowl 38-25 to Ole Miss. Again, my boy Jackson Dart. They returned 6 starters on offense and defense. Now, they returned Drew Allard, which his numbers might look good, but it looked rough for Drew Allard, in my opinion. So now what I was looking for, especially with all the hype, Trent, I'm blaming you, all the hype that Drew Allard had, it just didn't look as good as the numbers would indicate. He had 233, well, he went 233 for 389, 2,631 yards, 59.9 completion percentage, 25 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, add on 4 rushing touchdowns and make the total touchdowns at 29. So pretty decent numbers, but it just did not look as good as the numbers will indicate, in my opinion. I mean, other people might be saying, Carl, you're crazy. That's just my opinion. Return Nick Singleton, running back, 171 carries, 752 yards, 4.4 carry, 8 touchdowns. So Nick Singleton had a really good year. But not only did they bring back Nick Singleton, they bring back Katron Allen. 172 carries, 902 yards, 5.2 a carry, 6 touchdowns. So his average is way better than Nick Singleton. Bring back Kobe King, linebacker, 59 total tackles, 39 solos, and a sack and a half. This one, until draft night, before the draft, threw me off. I thought Abdul Carter was going to the draft. No, he's coming back to Penn State, where he had 49 total tackles, 26 solos, 4.5 sacks, 5 pass breakups, a pick, and a forced fumble. That's a defensive end. He's an edge defensive end, however you want to classify it. Same thing to me at this point in the NFL generation. They lose. Oh, wait, one more, my bad. They return Jalen Reed, safety, 46 total tackles, 32 solos, sack, pass breakup, and 2 picks. Now, they lost Keandre Lambert-Smith, wide receiver, who had 53 catches, 673 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He went to Auburn. They lost Dante Cephas, who I thought was going to have a better year coming out of UTS. No. He came out of Kent State, I believe. But But he had 22 catches, 246 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's now at K-State. Lost Daquan Hardy, who I actually really like at cornerback. He is now on the Bills. He had 22 total tackles, 12 solos, a sack, 7 pass breakups, and 2 picks. They also lost Kalen King. Yes, the brother of Kobe King. Now, Kalen King's situation was a little crazy to me. I know before the year, he was projected as a first-round pick. He fell all the way to the 7th round. I guess you would say how the mighty has fallen. I mean, he still got drafted, so he still has a shot to making the team. But to being projected first round to going to the 7th, even falling behind a teammate of yours or a former teammate in Daquan Hardy, kind of crazy. But yeah, 29 total tackles, 20 solos, 2 pass breakups. He's now on the Packers. And they lost Chop Robinson. He went to the Dolphins on the edge. 15 total tackles, 12 solos, 4 sacks, pass breakup, and 2 forced fumbles. And they lost Adiza Isaac, currently on my Ravens, who was their edge rusher, who had 37 total tackles, 23 solos, 7.5 sacks, and a forced fumble. They had the 14th overall recruiting class, which was really good for Penn State. Well, it was really good, period, but it's good for Penn State as well. 57 for transfers, which is The only transfer I wrote down was Julian Fleming, coming over from Ohio State, where he had 26 catches for 270 yards. I think that's going to improve, though, at Penn State. Especially, I think he's going to come in and be the number 1 option, so that's good for him. Some numbers for Penn State. They were 53rd in total offense, 2nd in total defense, 12th in scoring offense, 3rd in scoring defense, 28th in rushing, 1st in rushing defense, tied 77th in passing, 7th in passing defense. So, again, if Drew Allard was a little better, I feel like if the Drew Allard was a little better, they could have beat Michigan. That was a close game until Blake Corum broke a long run late. Penn State had every chance to win that game. Just couldn't pull it out. But let's get into the schedule. First game of the schedule is West Virginia. They beat the mess out of West Virginia last year. And I didn't forget Penn State. They need to check on who bet on that game because they pulled some wild stuff. They was up big late, but they weren't covering. And normally they didn't do the normal run the clock out. They was throwing the ball, and they scored again to cover. And low-key, somebody needs to be checked for that. But that's at West Virginia this year. Then they play Bowling Green. That's a W in my opinion. So 2-0. Then they play Kent State. I think that's a W. Then they play Illinois. I think that's a W. I think they beat UCLA, beat USC on the road, beat Wisconsin on the road, lose to Ohio State, lose to Washington, beat Purdue on the road, beat Minnesota on the road, and then beat Maryland at home to end the year 10-2, 7-2. Same season as last year. But, hey, man, repeating 10-win seasons is it's no easy feat. So that's a good repeat right there. Now we move on to Purdue. They're coming off of a 4-8, 3-6 season, which I ain't gonna lie, 3 wins in the Big Ten for them last year was kind of surprising. Retiring 6 offensive starters, 5 defensive starters, including Hudson Card, the quarterback, 215 of 365, 2,000. Oh, I didn't change it. Hold on. There we go. Purdue. There we go. Boom. Let me do this so I can. There we go. But yeah. Where was I? 2,387 passing yards, 58.9 completion percentage, 15 touchdowns to 8 picks. Returned Devin Mockabee at running back, who had 172 carries, 807 yards, 4.7 carry, 6 touchdowns. The freshman I was talking about, Dylan Thieneman, returns at safety, 106 total tackles, 74 solos, 2 pass breakups, 6 picks, 2 forced fumbles. So he's right there with Caleb Downs, is one of the best safeties in the country. Return Yanni Karlaftis. I believe that's the brother of George Karlaftis. Linebacker, 52 total tackles, 28 solos, 2.5 sacks. Return Kydron Jenkins, linebacker, 56 total tackles, 40 solos, 7.5 sacks, a pass breakup, and a forced fumble. They lost Tyrone Tracy, which get well soon. He got hurt. He was down on the Giants. They said he was taking first-team reps. So I'm not shocked, man. Tyrone Tracy is a really good running back. He went 113 carries for 716 yards, 6.3 a carry, and 8 touchdowns. Lost Deion Burks, wide receiver, who went to Oklahoma, 47 catches for 629 yards and 7 touchdowns. Lost TJ Sheffield, who went to UConn, wide receiver, who had 32 catches for 381 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then they lost Abdur Rahim Yassin, which I'm not going to lie. When I seen his numbers, I was kind of surprised they were that low. I would watch him in games, and he would show flashes. He had 25 catches for 329 yards, no touchdowns. But he did transfer to USF, which y'all know that's going to be one of my 10 teams to look out for in the group of 5. Lost Nick Scorton, defensive lineman. 50 total tackles, 33 solos, 10 sacks, 3 PBUs, and a forced fumble. Now at Texas A&M. Lost Sunisai Kane. Get well soon. He made a crazy hit in the Eagles preseason game. I knew it when I seen it. It was helmet to helmet. He didn't fall down initially. He made the hit, but you could tell he was woozy. Like, dang, that was bad. And then he eventually went down. Get well soon. Safety, 79 total tackles, 55 solos, a sack, 7 PBUs, and a forced fumble. Lost Cam Allen, who I don't even think he's in the league right now, which is crazy. He, I think, was one of those guys who went from first-round projection to not drafted. I love Cam Allen. 30 total tackles, 25 solos, 6 pass breakups, and 3 picks. They had the 29th overall recruiting class, which was actually really good for Purdue. And 29th in transfers, so that's also really good. Transfers I wrote down was Cam Brown, transfers in at wide receiver from UCLA. 54 catches, 772 yards, and 6 touchdowns as a career. For a career at UCLA. Reggie Love III, again, I said it earlier in the Illinois segment, running back who had 116 carries, 567 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 4.9 a carry at Illinois. Then they got a whole bunch of receivers that are unproven. Then they get a lot of burn, including 2 from the University of Georgia. So we'll see how that works. They were 70th in total offense last year, 67th in total defense, 85th in scoring offense, tied 98th in scoring defense, 53rd in rushing, 43rd in rushing defense, which that was surprising to me because I remember Syracuse game, they was able to run all over them. Tied 84th in passing and 95th in passing defense. Now let's get into the schedule. First game against Indiana State. This is basketball, maybe a little bit tough fight, but football, I think that's a win. Notre Dame, blowout. Then at Oregon State, I have them beating at Oregon State. Winning against Oregon State. Nebraska, I have as an L. At Wisconsin as an L. At Illinois as an L. Against Oregon as an L. Northwestern, I have them beating Northwestern for their only Big Ten win. Then at Ohio State, L. Penn State, L. At Michigan State, L. And at Indiana, L. Going 3-9, 1-8 on the year. A down year for the boys. We move on to Rutgers. Rutgers under Greg Schiano coming off a 6-6, 3-6 year, where they beat Miami in the Pinstripe Bowl 31-24. That was again the Kyle Monunga game. Returned 7 starters on offense, 8 on defense. So a lot of starters returning, which is going to be surprising how I feel about Rutgers coming up. Return Kyle Monunga, running back, 242 carries, 1,260 yards, 62 yards, 5.2 a carry, and 8 touchdowns. Just basically carried the offense last year. I'm not going to lie. Return Christian Drummond, wide receiver, 36 catches, 468 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And I believe this is the leading receiver last year. Return Muhammad Toure, linebacker, 92 total tackles, 44 solos, 4.5 sacks, 2 pass breakups, a pick, and a forced fumble. Return Desmond Egbenison, who he showed his behind against MSU. Safety, who has 64 total tackles, 39 solos, a sack, and a pass breakup. Return Flip Dixon, defensive back, 76 total tackles, 51 solos, 5 pass breakups, a pick, and a forced fumble. Return Tyreen Powell, 52 total tackles, 25 solos, 2 sacks, 2 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. Now they lost Gavin Wimsatt at quarterback. I don't think that's a bad loss, to be honest with you. He went to Kentucky. He went 138 for 289, 1,735 yards, 47.8 completion percentage, which is horrid. 9 touchdowns to 8 picks, 497 rushing yards and 11 touchdowns. So the running game basically helped him out a lot at Rutgers. Lost Jaquay Jackson, who's currently on the Patriots, 22 catches for 361 yards and a touchdown. Lost Isaiah Washington, who's currently on the Ravens, 25 catches for 321 yards and a touchdown. Lost Max Melton at cornerback, 32 total tackles, 22 solos, a sack, 6 pass breakups, 3 picks, and a forced fumble, currently on the Cardinals. Lost Deion Jennings, linebacker, 94 total tackles, 44 solos, 4 pass breakups, and is currently on the Ravens. They had the 55th overall recruiting class and 108th in transfers, which does not help Rutgers' case at all. Again, like I said, they brought in Ethan Kelly-Akmanis, transferring a quarterback with 156 at 294, 53.1 completion percentage, not good. 1,838 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 9 picks out of Minnesota. Again, they brought in Dino Caliagmanis, I guess for the chemistry purposes, at wide receiver from Minnesota. Brought in Dymere Miller, transfer from wide receiver from Monmouth. 90 catches, 1,295 yards, 9 touchdowns. Hopefully, he can bring some of that FCS magic to Rutgers. But Rutgers, total offense, 120th. 16th for total defense. 94th for scoring offense. 32nd in scoring defense. 55th in rushing with Monunga and Gavin Wimsatt. 41st in rushing defense. 124th in passing. 10th in passing defense. Now, for the schedule, I have Rutgers beating Howard, then beating Akron, and then losing out the rest of the season to go 2-10, 0-9 in the Big Ten. That means they lose to VTech on the road, lose to Washington at home, lose to Nebraska on the road, lose to Wisconsin, lose to UCLA, lose to USC, lose to Minnesota, lose to Maryland on the road, lose to Illinois, and lose to Michigan State on the road. A major part of that is because if you remember my Minnesota numbers, which you probably don't, because I don't really. Let's look at Minnesota total passing. 123rd in passing. So they're right in front of Rutgers. And that quarterback is now at Rutgers. Caliagmanis, man, he's going to make that defense be on the field more than they want to be. And I think that's going to lower defensive numbers because they're going to be on the field a lot. Teams are going to load the box. They're going to try to stop Cal Monunga and force Adrian Caliagmanis to beat you in the air. And that's probably going to be leading to more turnovers. Adrian Caliagmanis is honestly the reason why I think Rutgers has a horrible year. That defense, I think, is going to have a good year. But Caliagmanis is going to have them on the field a lot. And I think that kills them. And to be honest with you, they have a tough schedule. They play VTech, which is really supposed to be really good this year. They play Washington, really good. They beat Nebraska. They play Nebraska, who I'm high on. Wisconsin is normally a really good Big Ten team. UCLA, USC are normally mid-tier. They're really good Pac-12 teams now in the Big Ten. And Michigan State owes them a W, owes them a whooping. So their schedule is kind of tough. They kind of got the rough end of the stick. 2-10, 0-9. I'm sorry, Rutgers fans are going to kill me. And it's just going to be what it's going to be. I'm sorry. Oh, and that whole time I did not put the Rutgers preview. Oh, I'm sick. I'm sick behind that. I'm so sick behind that. Sorry, Rutgers. I'm just disrespecting y'all in more ways than one. But we move on to the UCLA preview, and we are almost at the wrap-up. We have 4 more teams to preview. Then we do the wrap-up. It's almost 1 in the morning, so trust me, I want to be done just as much as y'all want me to be done, but we got 18 teams to cover. So UCLA, new head coach, Deshaun Foster, coming off a 75-4-5 season, won the LA Bowl versus Boise State 35-22, returned 6 offensive starters to 4 defensive starters. He returns Ethan Garbers, quarterback who went 98 of 146, 1,136 yards, 67.1 completion percentage, 11 touchdowns to 3 picks. Return TJ Harden at running back, 156 carries, 827 yards, 5.3 a carry, 8 touchdowns. Return Logan Lawyer, wide receiver, 59 catches for 635 yards and 5 touchdowns. Return JaMychal Sturdivant, which both of those coming back was a shock to me. Wide receiver, 36 catches, 597 yards and 4 touchdowns. Return Olawafe Oladejo, linebacker, 54 total tackles, 27 solos, half a sack, 3 pass breakers, and a pick. And they returned Devin Kirkwood, defensive back, 24 total tackles, 18 solos, 2 pass breakers, a pick, and a forced fumble. Now, I wasn't going to put him at first, but he did start a good bit amount of games, and he was a 5-star freshman, so I put him. They lost Dante Moore. Didn't really look good at UCLA, to be honest. But he's now at Oregon. I think he's just going to be a predecessor of taking Dylan Gabriel's spot when he graduates. He went 114 to 213, 1,610 yards, 53.5 completion percentage, 11 touchdowns to 9 picks. Carson Steele, he's now graduated. He's currently on the Chiefs as well. He's a running back, 167 total carries for 847 yards, 5.1 a carry, and 6 touchdowns. I know my boy Jay. He was like, man, they played the not FCS because he was not an FCS running back, but they play at the lower mid-major level for a reason. But I think Carson still had a great year at UCLA, really good year, and now he's at the league trying to make the Chiefs. Latu, defensive end, now on the Colts, first round draft pick. 49 total tackles, 28 solos, 13 sacks, 2 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles. Man did it all for UCLA last year, and hopefully he can do it all for the Colts. Lost Alex Johnson, defensive back, currently on the Giants. 29 total tackles, 20 solos, 3 pass breakups, 5 picks, and a touchdown. Lost John Humphrey, cornerback. He's now at USC. 31 total tackles, 22 solos, 3 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles. Joining him at USC would be Kamari Ramsey, a safety, with 40 total tackles, 27 solos, 4 pass breakups, and a pick. They had the 44th overall recruiting class, 44th for transfers, which is not bad. Not bad at all. Including Jalen Berger, transferred in from MSU by way of Wisconsin before he came to MSU. He had 25 carries for 93 yards, 3.7 to carry for a touchdown. Rico Flores Jr. from Notre Dame transfers in, who had 27 catches for 392 yards and a touchdown. Brian Addison, the safety, comes in from Oregon, who had 11 total tackles, 4 solos, and a pick. The reason why I know this name is because he played receiver before he moved to safety. Jacob Busick transfers in defensive end from Navy, who had 4 total tackles, all of them being solos, 2 pass breakups, and a pick. And then KJ Wallace transfers in at quarterback from Georgia Tech. 42 total tackles, 27 solos, 7 pass breakups, sack, a pick, and 2 forced fumbles. So some numbers from UCLA. 32nd in total offense, 10th in total defense, 67th in scoring offense, 14th in scoring defense, 16th in rushing, 2nd in rushing defense, 59th in passing, 61st in passing defense, and 129th in red zone offense, which is why they went 7-5 with that good of a defense. Could not capitalize on drives. We're going to go into the schedule. First game is at Hawaii, which I have them as a W, even though I know playing at Hawaii can get tricky. I think they'll be fine. Then they play at home against Indiana, I have as a W. Then they're on the road against LSU, and I have them losing to LSU. Then at home against Oregon, which I have as an L. At Penn State, also have them losing. I have them beating Minnesota at home, beating Rutgers on the road, losing to Nebraska on the road, losing to Iowa at home, losing to Washington on the road, beating USC in the rivalry game at home, and then beating Fresno State at home to finish 6-6, 4-5 in conference play, which is one game off of last year. And I wouldn't even deem that as a bad first year for Deshaun Foster. He's still going bowling. One game difference, a lot of turnover. You actually have a pretty tough schedule. So I wouldn't be mad at that if I'm a UCLA fan. Now is the part for where Teddy does not want to watch, because we're talking about the USC Trojans, and I'm not going to lie, I'm about to have Teddy come in here right now. If he's still up. If not, well, he'll see it in the morning. But the USC Trojans coming off a 7-5, 5-4 season. Won the Holiday Bowl against Louisville, 42-28. Shout out Miller Moss. They return 5 offensive starters, 4 defensive starters. They lose a lot of production at receiver. They lose all their production at receiver, and they lose a lot of production at running back too. They return Quentin Joyner at running back, 18 carries for 125 yards, 6.9 a carry, and a touchdown. They return Zachariah Branch, who was basically a return guy for them, but he had 31 receptions for 320 yards and 2 touchdowns. And like I said, he's a return guy. He had a punt return and a kick return touchdown on the year. They returned Deuce Robinson, who was kind of like one of the guys that sparingly get put in, but he had 16 catches for 351 yards and 2 touchdowns. They returned Bryson Shaw at safety, 87 total tackles. I'm going to relook this up because my handwriting is just god awful. And I can't tell whether that's a 87 or a 57, which I be trying so hard to write good, man, but it's just, you can't. Hey, man, God didn't bless me with the greatest handwriting. You know how teachers be like, you can't read your own handwriting? No, I can't. I'm sorry. It was 57 total tackles. 57 total tackles, 41 solos, and half a sack. They returned Jalen Smith at cornerback, 75 total tackles, 58 solos, a sack, a pass breakup, and a forced fumble. Returned Mason Cobb at linebacker, 85 total tackles, 50 solos, and a pass breakup. Returned Jamil Muhammad at defensive end, 47 total tackles, 29 solos, 6.5 sacks, a pass breakup, and 2 forced fumbles. Now let's get into the production that they lost, because they lost a lot of production on the offensive end. Defensively, you might not be too mad they lost that production. They lost Caleb Williams, quarterback, who went 266 and 388, 3,633 yards, 68.6 completion percentage, 30 touchdowns to 5 picks, and he had 11 rushing touchdowns to add to that total, making the total touchdowns 41. We all know he's the first overall pick that went to the Bears. Lost Marshawn Lloyd, who is now on the Packers, who went 116 carries for 820 yards, 7.1 a carry, which is phenomenal, 9 touchdowns. Lost Taj Washington, currently on the Dolphins, 59 total catches, 1,062 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Phenomenal year Taj Washington had last year. I think he even bought out in the bowl game as well. Lost Brennan Rice, who dropped tremendously in the draft. He went to the Chargers, 45 total catches, 791 yards, 12 touchdowns. Lost Solomon Byrd on the edge, 48 total tackles, 29 solos, 6 sacks, pass breakup, and 4 forced fumbles. He's currently on the Texans. Lost Christian Roland Wallace, cornerback, who's currently on the Chiefs. 37 total tackles, 27 solos, 9 pass breakups, 2 interceptions. Lost Kalen Bullock, safety, 61 total tackles, 42 solos, 7 pass breakups, 2 picks, and a touchdown on the Texans. So as bad as this defense was, they did have a lot of guys that are trying to make NFL rosters. Lost Romello Height, who's the transfer to Georgia Tech, defensive lineman who had 21 total tackles, 12 solos, and 4 sacks. They did have the 20th overall recruiting class, which is right up Lincoln Riley's alley. 19th in transfers. Charles Ross transfers in at wide receiver, which they need a lot of that wide receiver production to be replaced. Out of San Jose State, 26 total catches, 347 yards, and a touchdown. Jay Fair, wide receiver, transferring from Auburn, 31 catches, 324 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Woody Marks, the phenomenal running back out of Mississippi State, he transfers in. He had 121 carries for 573 yards, 4.7 a carry, and 4 touchdowns while at Mississippi State. Jada Maeva transfers in. I'm assuming. I don't even know why he transferred in, to be completely honest, because I think Miller Moss is also young. But he was a quarterback that led UNLV to the Mountain West Conference Championship game. Now, they did lose it. But he comes in having had numbers of 224, 353, 3,085 yards, 63.5 completion percentage, 17 touchdowns to 10 picks out of UNLV. And Achille Arnold, safety, transferred in from Oregon State. He had 62 total tackles, 25 solos, 6 pass breakups, half a sack, and 2 picks. Now, some numbers from from USC. Like I said, Iowa offense, USC defense. 10th in total offense. 116th in total defense. 3rd in scoring offense. 118th in scoring defense. 91st in rushing. 116th in rushing defense. 5th in passing. 101st in passing defense. They had not one defensive stat that I have on this paper in double digits. They're all triple figure. That's just horrible, man. It's Iowa offense. It's just so bad. It makes USC lose a lot of games. Speaking of losing a lot of games, let's get into the schedule. First game at Allegiant Stadium, which is in Vegas, against LSU. I have this as a loss. Utah State, I have as a win. At Michigan, I have as a loss. Then I have them beating Wisconsin at home. Then I have them losing to Minnesota again, because I think Minnesota can get stops defensively, and I think they're going to be able to put up points because USC defenses are normally not good. Penn State, that's a loss. Maryland, I think they beat Maryland. I think they beat Rutgers. I think they lose to Washington on the road. Then they lose to Nebraska at home. I think they lose the rivalry game at UCLA. And I think they lose to Notre Dame, making USC go 4-8, 3-6 in conference play. Teddy, I know I'm going to wake up to a barrage of pissed off messages. I know that you're ranked 25th in the country right now, or 23rd, one of the two. Either way, you're ranked. And I know you're optimistic about the season, but I just think the schedule, first of all, is tough. Your non-conference schedule consists of LSU and Notre Dame. Now, Utah State, that's a decent amount of school, but they went through troubles late this offseason. Blake Anderson being fired, I think Title IX. I think he ignored Title IX, something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know he's now gone, so that hurts Utah State a lot. But your non-con of LSU, Notre Dame is terrible. Then your conference schedule of Michigan, Penn State, Washington, UCLA, which is a rivalry, so that's going to be there. That's tough too. And Nebraska, in my opinion, that's tough too. So That's 7 tough games. I'm sorry. I'm the messenger. So I could say don't shoot the messenger, but I'm the messenger. We move on from USC to the last team to join the Big Ten this year, Washington, and also second to last school I have to do. So, I didn't even mention that UCLA has a new head coach in Deshaun Foster. I think in the Michigan segment, I didn't mention that they have Sharon Moore, but those have been mentioned previously throughout the stream. So just thought I'd bring it back up just in case you missed it. But yeah, I did mention them earlier in the stream, but I don't think I mentioned it when their team previews came up. But anyway, Washington has a new head coach, Jed Fish from Arizona. Washington's coming off a 12-0 season where they won the Pac-12 championship, the last Pac-12 championship to date. And they lost in the Natty 34-13 to Michigan. Sad day. But they returned zero offensive starters and 2 defensive starters. So, again, I know I spoke on it earlier. They returned basically no production, starting-wise. Now, they do return Alfonso Tupatula, linebacker with 69 total tackles, 39 solos, and a sack and a half, a pass breakup, and a pick. And they do return Carson Bruner, linebacker with 86 total tackles, 43 solos, 3 pass breakups, a pick, and a forced fumble. Now, they lose a lot, as you know. Returning 0 offensive starters and 2 defensive starters, you lose 20 players starting. They lost Michael Penix Jr., went to the Falcons, quarterback, 363 of 555, 4,903 yards, 65.4 completion percentage, 36 touchdowns to 11 picks. Lost Roma Dunzier to the Bears, wide receiver, 92 catches for 1,640 yards and 13 touchdowns. Lost Jalen Polk, who was he was like my favorite. He wasn't the best, but he was like my favorite receiver in this core. 69 catches, 1,159 yards, and 9 touchdowns to the Pats. Lost Jalen McMillan, wide receiver, who had 45 catches, 559 yards, and 5 touchdowns to the Bucks. Lost Jabbar Muhammad to Oregon, like I stated earlier, cornerback. 46 total tackles, 41 solos, 2 sacks, 14 pass breakups, and 3 picks. Lost Braylon Trice, edge rusher, 49 total tackles, 30 solos, 7 sacks, 2 pass breakups, and a forced fumble to the Falcons. Lost Michelle Powell, defensive back, 38 total tackles, 29 solos, 6 pass breakups, 3 picks, and a touchdown. Lost him to Miami University. And lost Dominique Hampton, safety, who had 108 tackles, 64 solos, 7 pass breakups, 2 picks to the Commanders. So lost a lot to the NFL and transfer portal. 30th overall recruiting class, which is not Washington normally could do better. But Jeff Fish first year, Killing DeBoer is gone. So hopefully Jeff Fish can get that number up. But they were also 11th in transfers. That's actually marvelous. Now, a lot of those came from Arizona, and I put it on the paper. He had 10 people transfer over from Arizona to Washington. I know he wish he could have got Noah Fafita and Troy McMillan, but they decided to stay at Arizona. But he got Jonah Coleman, Isaiah Ward, Russell Davis Jr., et cetera, et cetera. Will Rogers, however, transferred in, like I mentioned earlier, at quarterback. He went 142 or 237, 1,626 yards, 59.9 completion percentage, 12 touchdowns and 4 picks out of Mississippi State. Jeremiah Hunter transfers in at wide receiver, 62 catches, 703 yards for 7 touchdowns out of Cal. Darren Parham transfers in at linebacker, 106 total tackles, 60 solos, 2.5 sacks, 2 pass breakups, a pick, and a forced fumble out of San Jose State. Cameron Broussard transfers in at safety, 73 total tackles, 32 solos, 4 pass breakups, and 2 picks out of San Jose State. No, excuse me. No, I'm so sorry. Read that wrong. That's the one prior. That's Parham, right? He came out of Sacramento State. Looking to be another good transfer out of Sac State. You know, you had Cam Scatterbo, and now hopefully he could do the job. I don't think Cam Ward come from Sac State? No. Did he? Oh, now I got to look. Now I'm mad. Because I know Cam Ward came from the FCS before he went to Washington State and Miami. But was it I think it was Sacramento State. I think Cam Ward did come from Sacramento State. Let's see stats. No, he came from Incarnate Word. That's what it was. Sorry about that. Where the hell is the age? Oh, he's 22. I know. Which I love Cam Ward. If you watch this channel, you know I love Cam Ward. But they were 12th in total offense, 96 in total defense, which actually shocked me. 13th in scoring offense, 54th in scoring defense, 104th in rushing. Didn't really shock me, even though they had Dylan Johnson. 38th in rushing defense, 2nd in passing, and 117th in passing defense. That only shocked me because Jabbar Muhammad was so good on locking down one side of the field. But then you had games like Oregon and stuff like that where people were just slinging a rock. So it was kind of a shocker. Let's get into the schedule. First game against Weber State, W. Eastern Michigan, W. Washington State at Lumen Field, home of the 12th man, which is the Apple Cup. I have that as a W. Northwestern as a W. At Rutgers is the W. I have them losing to Michigan at home, beating Iowa on the road, beating Indiana on the road, beating USC at home, beating Penn State on the road, beating UCLA at home, and losing to Oregon on the road. Going 10-2, 7-2, which is barely not good enough for the Big Ten championship. But all in all, a great season for Washington. And last, but certainly not least, before we get into the Big Ten wrap-up, we have Wisconsin. Wisconsin is coming off a 7-5, 5-4 season. Lost the Live Quest Bowl 35-31 to LSU, which is actually a really good game. Returned 5 starters on offense and defense. Returned Braden Locke, who just was announced that he's going to be quarterback 2 behind Tyler Van Dyke, who transferred in from Miami. So that kind of will justify why I have the record they have going on later. But Braden Locke returns at 76 of 180, 152, 777 yards with a completion percentage of 50%, 5 touchdowns to a pick. They return Ches Malusi at running back, 51 carries, 307 yards, 6 a carry for 4 touchdowns. Return Will Paulin at wide receiver, 74 catches, 837 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Return Bryson Green at wide receiver, 32 catches for 480 yards and 2 touchdowns. Return Hunter Wooler at safety, who had 120 total tackles, 74 solos, a sack, 6 pass breakups, and 2 interceptions. Return Daryl Peterson at linebacker for the Badgers, who had 47 total tackles, 27 solos, 4.5 sacks, and 2 pass breakups. And return Ricardo Hallman at cornerback, 34 total tackles, 27 solos, 5 pass breakups, 7 picks, and a touchdown. Now, they lose Tanner Mordecai, who disappointed. Well, he got hurt, but he was having a disappointing season, in my opinion, coming from SMU. I thought he would do better at Wisconsin. He was 204 for 374, 2,064 yards, 65% completion percentage, 9 touchdowns and 4 picks. He's currently trying to make the 49ers, and good luck to him on that. Lost Braylon Allen, running back, who's trying to make the Jets, who had 181 carries, 984 yards, 5.4 carry, and 12 touchdowns. I really like Braylon Allen. Lost Shamir DK, wide receiver, who had 19 catches, 328 yards, and a touchdown. Transferring to Florida. Lost Jordan Turner, linebacker, transferred to MSU, Michigan State. But he had 61 total tackles, 33 solos, 3 sacks, 2 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. Lost Jason Maitre, cornerback, 33 total tackles, 24 solos, 3 pass breakups, and a pick. Currently trying to make the Dolphins. And they lost Maima Nogmeta, linebacker, 59 total tackles, 30 solos, 2 sacks, a pass breakup, trying to make the Bengals. Now, they did have the 25th overall recruiting class, which is really good, and 23rd in transfers, which is also really good for Wisconsin. Transfers include Joseph Griffin Jr., wide receiver who coming in from Boston College, who had 25 catches, 345 yards, and a touchdown. Like I said earlier, Tyler Van Dyke, who has just been named the starter, I think yesterday, if not today. But he was 219, 333 yards. 219 for 333, 2,703 yards, 65.8 completion percentage, 19 touchdowns and 12 picks, transferring in from the U. And like I said, since he's the starter, it kind of justifies the record that I have. Tawee Walker from Oklahoma, which was a really good get, in my opinion. Running back, 102 carries, 513 yards, 5 a carry for 7 touchdowns. And he was running back 2 behind Gavin Sawchuk, who's still at Oklahoma. Tyrell Henry, as I talked about in my MSU segment, which I really like Tyrell Henry as a playmaker, as a return man. He's now at Wisconsin, who had 24 catches, 195 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And R.J. Delaney from Toledo, who was opposite of Quinyon Mitchell, who's now in the league as an Eagle. He comes over at cornerback, 20 total tackles, 10 solos, 8 pass breakups, and a pick. So I think that's really good for Wisconsin. They were 69th in total offense, 38th for total defense, 91st in scoring offense, 20th for scoring defense, 61st in rushing. 39th in rushing defense, 69th in passing, and 39th in passing defense. Now, the defense, in my opinion, was the reason why Wisconsin was 7-5. They almost had a chance of beating Ohio State because of how good they were defensively and just Cal McCord. But let's get into the record and the schedule. Their first game is against Western Michigan. I have it as a W. Then they go to South Dakota at home, which is a W. Then they play Alabama. That's a loss. Then they play USC, which also has a loss. Then they beat Purdue, in my opinion. They beat Rutgers at Rutgers. They lose to Northwestern at Northwestern. Lose to Penn State, lose at Iowa, lose to Oregon, lose at Nebraska, and end the season with a W against Minnesota at home to go 5-7, 3-6. A super down year if you're a Wisconsin Badger, but hey, man, we are at the end of the road. We have the Big Ten wrap-up. The show is almost 2 hours. I appreciate it if you came in and stopped by. If you popped in, I appreciate you still watching. But we got to get to the end of the road. And with that being said, I have the standings. Number 1, and going to the Big Ten championship is none other than Oregon. I have them going 12-0, 8-0. Number 2, to play Oregon in the Big Ten championship is Ohio State. Ohio State finishes the year 11-1, 8-1 to play Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. Third is Washington going 10-2, 7-2. Now, some of these, again, don't really, if it's not a head-to-head tiebreaker, after that, it's just alphabetical order. That's just, for me, it is what it is. Fourth, Nebraska, 10-2, 7-2. Fifth, Penn State, 10-2, 7-2. Sixth, Iowa, 10-2, 7-2. Seventh, Michigan State, 9-3, 6-3. Eighth, Michigan, 8-4, 6-3. Ninth, UCLA, 6-6, 4-5. 10th, USC, 4-8, 3-6. 11th, Indiana, 6-6, 3-6. 12th, Illinois, 5-7, 3-6. 13th, Wisconsin, 5-7, 36. 14th, Maryland, 5-7, 3-6. 15th, Minnesota, 5-7, 2-7. 16th, Northwestern, 5-7, 2-7. 17th, Purdue, 3-9, 1-8. And 18th, Rutgers at 2-10, 0-9. Now, for my Big Ten championship game winner, I do have Ohio State winning the Big Ten championship. Here's why. Neutral site game 1. 2, I think that defense is going to be stifling. And I think that they can contain Dylan Gabriel. This is not a home game for either team. Again, I gave Oregon the win against Ohio State because they were at home. None of that matters. I think Ohio State finally pulls out, and this hurts to say because I don't like Ohio State, but I think Ohio State pulls out a Big Ten championship game and they advance to the playoffs. And my Big Ten player of the year is Dylan Gabriel of Oregon. Now, we have reached the end of the road in this Big Ten preview, almost 2 hours long. Like I said, I appreciate you for watching. If you're still watching, whether you popped in, whatever, but yeah, we have to end this episode. It's late. I'm ready to go to bed. I got to go to work tomorrow. I want to call out, but it is what it is. The Big 12 will be soon. Now, I don't know if it's not going to be tomorrow. I know that for a fact. It's not going to be tomorrow. It will be soon. I know I have an episode featuring my guy, Luke. He will be here Friday to talk MSU football. I know I previewed MSU already. I kind of want to get his thoughts on the season coming up. How he feels we're going to do, how he feels about me thinking that we're going 9-3. What's his ceiling? What's his floor? Things like that. So that will be Friday, TBD on time. And I know for a fact we will have the SEC on Sunday. Should be around 8 o'clock. And that's for a fact going to be featuring Ace. Joe, he says he wants to do it. I don't know if he will. I don't know if he's going to have time. I don't know if he's just doing Texas. We'll get all that ironed out. But the SEC will for sure be Sunday, and the Big 12 will for sure be before the SEC. Just don't know what day. Could be Saturday in the morning. Could be Friday night after Luke. Who knows? We'll see. But again, man, thank y'all for tuning in to CTC. It's been a long night. Y'all get y'all some sleep because I know I will. Please tune into these previews. We still got 2 more previews left. Like I said, the Big 12, SEC, and then we got the top 10 teams you should know from the group of 5 featuring Ace. That should be fun to do as well. But until then, man, y'all, again, get y'all some sleep, and I'm gone. Peace.
Thank you for staying to the end. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like this video, subscribe, and also hit that notification button so you can be notified next time we put out a video. If you're listening on any podcast platform, subscribe and hit that notification button, y'all, so you can be notified we put out another podcast audio. And last but not least, hit that share button. No matter what you're listening to or watching it, hit that share button and send it to somebody that you know that would love to watch this episode you just listened to. So once again, thank you for staying to the end, and we'll see y'all in the next episode.